independence is the virtue. And I think, independence is a masculine virtue. And I think we should teach men this. But my argument is that for a long time, people are viewing themselves as desiring this or viewing this kind of masculine goal, not because of the intrinsic benefits that come from this or the societal benefits or, the actual role fulfillment and the benefits that come from that, which I largely agree with Scott on. But instead based entirely on more of a,
lizard brain need come.
While seemingly no one can agree on what it means to be a man, quote unquote, nearly everyone in America will agree what modern men do not have their houses in order. From their popularity of the hyper-controversial Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, to the ever-growing voice given to transgender people and struggles to the popularity of the Me Too movement and dating advice content. Everyone wants to talk about men and what it means to be a man. While the currently tumultuous climate in mind, how do you want masculinity to change? In simpler terms, we talk a lot about how men are and how men were. What do you want men to become? Okay. And shout out to my man Kobe, who came up with this topic. And in fact, why don't we give Kobe the first crack at it for opening statements and talk to it.
Yeah, I mean, as I've been focusing on my body, and I've been honing my steel, my urge to have a beautiful, strong son has grown, in the words of Mishima, the Japanese writer. And I think that men don't have a very bright sun right now. I think we're in the dark. I think men cannot agree very much on what it means to be a man. I think that a lot of discussions, whether it's discussions because of feminism, whether discussions because of the increasing advocacy for transgender rights, I think there's a lot of up in the air about what it be the basic. What does it even mean to be a man? What does it constitute? What does it not constitute? And I would, honestly, I'm really interested to hear what everybody else has to say. I personally want there to be a masculinity that I can be proud of and comfortable in. One that I feel like I don't have to be really performative of. One that I feel like I don't have to be really. I feel like in some groups I have to tell everybody that I'm not one of those guys. But then if I'm in other groups, I have to ensure them that I actually am one of those guys. If that makes sense, right? When I'm with the boys, I have to make sure they know that I'm not too much of a feminist. But when I'm with the girls, I have to make sure I'm not like one of the bestial beasts. That's just something I have a lot of feelings on this, so I could ramble. So I'll keep it short.
Thank you so much. Lactoid.
Yeah, so I believe masculinity is culturally defined as the traits that have traditionally made men attractive to the opposite sex: independence and the ability to be a protector. This is summed up in financial, physical, and social power, aka ripped, rich, and charismatic. These are the traits helpful in attracting a partner. However, this desire is gynocentric. Masculinity is defined as though the goal is mirroring what women want of you in the sexual marketplace. I would like to see a social shift in which the ideals of independence ascend beyond the male lizard brain and dependence is rejected, to where life satisfaction and advancement of yourself is not based on pleasing another person, but instead based on pleasing your own higher order level goals. Simply said, get ripped because you want to, as opposed to today, in which many men get ripped just to attract women. Again, a dependence on women that is antithetical to the masculine trait of independence. This is the core difference between Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, and why Peterson is tolerable and Tate is not. MGTOW is criticized as being too hardline, which I think it is, but there is an underlying message within the MGTOW movement that I find incredibly valuable. Men are undervalued partially because we devalue ourselves by basing our value on what women think of us and viewing each other based on our relation to women. Once we can cast off those expectations and value ourselves and not be dictated by our lizard brains, stop chasing women when it's bad for us, and only pursue relationships that are actually good for our future well-being, then we can truly ascend and become godlike Chads.
That was epic. Fuck that. I mean, we can end the panel right there, honestly. Let's go on to our friend Scott, but I just don't know how he could possibly add any more.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting look at it. I'd be willing to interrogate that as we go forward. I believe that what men should be is men should be rational. We are living in an rational society. We're living in an anti-family society, and generations of eschewing rationality and eschewing family have destroyed men. The reason that people like Andrew Tate, the reason that people like the red pillars that, just dog on feminists and, are gym bros become so popular, the reason is the same reason that the anti-hero is popular. It is an incomplete masculinity, but it is a masculinity nonetheless. Our society has completely lost our masculinity, and we've gotten rid of our violent nature. We've gotten rid of our diet. The meme is somewhat true, of the soy boy, right? We have destroyed men. We've taken fathers out of the household, and one of the worst things about that is the lack of rough and tumble play, the lack of engaging in physical violence and the limits of those violence, because that is what being a man actually is having the capacity for violence, and then being a strong and dominant person, and then using your will and your rationality to not only contain that, but channel that. When man's nature is when man's nature is kind of like taken away from us, then we lose progress as a society. We deny our nature. We give it to the state. We give it to police. We offshoot it to other places. We try to pretend like violence is something that like we don't want in society, which is fucking stupid, because you literally can't have a society without violence. The only difference is that you give it to the cops to do for you, because people are violent. But instead, we start to celebrate these kind of stage 2 men that are willing to talk shit, men that say toxic things. They even become sexually attracted to other people. And the reason is because at least it's a man, not a fucking boy. Nietzsche, had a question from Will to Power. Now I can't think. Will to Power, I believe. I fucked it up. Regardless, he had this question: Are you good? Are you moral? Or are you a coward? And that's the thing. Is like we've seen studies where people get in riots and all of a sudden they start breaking things, and then the cops pull them in and they go, "What happened?" They're like, "I didn't know I had that in me." They were shell shocked by the idea that they could break things and do crazy things because they've never experienced that. So what I want men to do is I want a society that celebrates families, keeps fathers in the household, and most importantly, we have to destroy the irrationality in our politics and our philosophy and our culture and begin to value reason again, because it is the combination of rough and tumble play and experiencing violence and experiencing our kind of baser natures, and the combination of reason that pushes us forward to progress that builds empires. We've stagnated deeply.
Oh man, some interesting answers here. I'm actually already getting excited for this conversation. It's actually all right. Let's go to Corey. Don't give us a soy take, all right? Give us a very manly take. Thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna let you down. I'm sure I'm gonna let you down, as I always do every week. Well, yeah, there's already a lot to unpack. I agree with you. I'll keep it brief. I'll be explicitly clear. Like, I am a gender abolitionist, 100%. I would want men to stop asking the question of what type of man they need to be and become an obsess over how to be masculine, or like, whether they're concerned about being too feminine, and just ask yourself the question instead of like what type of person you want to be. I've never asked myself the question of what type of man or how masculine I am. I'm more concerned about what type of human and person I want to be. I think that is the larger question, the more appropriate question, and I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, interesting. All right, so many different opinions here. Let's go to Tuna.
I got something for us really quick.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets.
Just had to do the meme really quick. So my first thought here, I'm oh my god, fuck the fucking phone, man. Okay, so I think when we're talking about like a man, I've got a different interpretation of Nietzsche personally than Scott here. I believe very much so in the rationality, in the creativity, but I think that a man is a human who is able to be comfortable with all aspects of himself, whether or not they adhere or incongruent with some kind of outward role, whether or not that's something that was evolved to, whether or not that was something that was socially created. I think a man is a person who is at comfort and it fully accepts his uniqueness, whatever it is inside of him, and is able to deterministically mediate his relation with all other people. I would say that if a man finds inside of himself the creative will or the caring will, these things that get labeled as feminine, he's no less a man. He's actually more a man to be able to encapsulate those into his identity. If a person finds in themselves strength and dominance and the ability to be a leader, then he is just as much a man. It has everything to do with sort of a balance of lactoid and Scott's positions. Whether or not that person is able to truly be an individual, whether that person is not dominated by the whims of the internal emotion in the given moment, or by the whims of the thing that flows above him, the social condition that that tries to define him from exterior.
Thank you. Thank you. Aiko.
Yeah. So the more I think about this, the more I think about how this relates to social pressures and social roles. So like it or not, masculinity and femininity have continued to exist even through different social movements that have run across time. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of what Lactoid said I agreed with, except that I would say that it's just as true for women as it is for men, right? They should also not define themselves in terms of how men see them. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it's more acceptable to say it with regards to women, right? Feminism constantly talks about the male gaze and how we women shouldn't define themselves in terms of the male gaze. And Lactoid's pointing out is that men shouldn't define themselves in terms of the female gaze or whatever. So I think that what's most important is that people be allowed to be themselves. And that is to say, you shouldn't have to, if you're male, you shouldn't have to be pressured to perform masculinity, but at the same time, you shouldn't feel pressure in the other direction either. That is to say, we should all feel the ability to be like who we are, without judgment. And I think today there's a lot of people who at least perceive, right or wrong, that there's judgment in men being masculine. And I think that if you have families where men play the traditionally masculine, play the traditionally feminine role, I think those families ought to be just as accepted as any other family, and that we shouldn't try to tell people that they're sort of locked into gender roles that they've chosen to live out for themselves or feel like work well for their family. And so I think that if we're going back to what the prompt was talking about, which was a crisis within boys and men, I think that one potential crisis would be that people don't necessarily know where to go if their traditional feels inaccessible. And I feel like that's maybe an overcorrection to a problem that was a real problem at one point, and it still continues to be in many circles. But I think that I don't think the answer is, and to all respect to Corey, I don't think the answer is to abolish these roles, but to allow people to choose whatever role they want in any given situation.
Yeah, thank you. And finally, Dark Lord and Saber Dewey.
I've actually been I guess struggling is the wrong word, but I've been thinking about this a lot since my mushroom trip last weekend. Because as I explained to you guys, I went through like the whole ego death thing, right? I did like 5 grams of shrooms by myself in the dark. And like I went to some weird places mentally. And I've been thinking about because I grew up in a very traditionally masculine environment. I think the way that my father raised me was like more a little more extreme than most fathers, I think. In terms of just really beating the emotions out of me when I was a kid. And I think being able to see that from another perspective, and then see myself, right, and what that led me to be or to value as a person through my life. I think that there were like there's a lot of benefit, right? To like I think it's good to be logical. I think it's good to be emotionally strong. I think it's good to have integrity and to be responsible and to want to provide and to want to provide security and to want to keep your friends and family safe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if I had a daughter, I'd want her to be all those things too. Right? This isn't something that I'd want just for a son. I don't want just a son who's physically capable. I would want my daughter to be physically capable too. I wouldn't want her to be relying on other people, right? I don't want her to be able to feel confident enough to be independent. So like I don't have a good answer for like what is actually masculinity. What is a man supposed to do that is any different from what I'd want my like my daughter to do, right? Or any different from what I'd want my sisters to do. So I don't know. I've been struggling to find like a trait or a thing that would apply to men that wouldn't also apply to women. So the lines around my idea of gender have like massively broken down over the last like week. Because prior to this, I think my position would have been much more like, hey, if you're a man, you need to, you're responsible for the household. You're responsible for providing. You need to provide like a safe, secure space for your girlfriend. You need to be there to like nurture her, to help her grow. But like, I don't know. I think that I'm gonna ramble because I really have been like struggling with this over the last week, but I just don't know. Right now, I feel like I've grown in a lot of ways over the last week, and I'm so great.
Yeah, thanks for that, Doobie. I'll toss my opinion into the ring right now because I wasn't going to, but you guys have all said so many interesting things, and I really want to hear more of your opinions because it's pretty fascinating. And shout out to Aiko because he said the thing I was going to say to Lactoid. That like if you replace the word man and feminine, like switch that around, then that would be like a dozen videos about how women need to, like be more independent and not focus on like defining themselves as by men. I thought that was super interesting that came from you, but yeah, like I think it's what I want more is freedom. I think the problem with those Andrew Tates and the Jordan Petersons and whatnot is that they have a very narrowly defined version of masculinity. I think masculinity could be, or maybe let me adjust that, right? I think we maybe mix masculinity with us being a person, right? Like what Corey was trying to get to, right? Like people say like, to be masculine is who I am as a person, and so I have to have these traits, right? These very masculine traits, which usually are defined by violence, and without that, then I'm not a good man, meaning not a good person, rather than even separating the two. So even if you accept the masculine is the violent type of rhetoric, you can accept that may not be your whole personality, that there could be so much more to you. And I think we're having shades of that, at least I hear it, shades of that from different people here. And maybe I'm just saying the same thing in different words, but let's explore this. So Scott.
Apparently I'm the only fucking person that's even has a semblance of right-wingedness in them. Listen, you guys are talking about you're missing the point of gender, right? The point of gender is to socialize people into a society that is built upon the foundations of their entire history and culture of what works. There's a reason that we have gender roles. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to follow everything in the gender role or you're less of a man. What it means to be a man is that you are socialized into these things that work. You fit a mold within society. And then when you are able to actually understand who you are and grow, then you can experiment with those things. So let me put it into a more basic example. Let's think about an electrician. You're going to hire an electrician for your house. You don't want an electrician that graduated high school, got a job, and said, I know everything there is about being an electrician. I'm going to experience being an electrician myself. I'm going to experiment on what electricity is with my own little experiments, and I'm going to go do some work on your house. No. But you know what you don't want? You also don't want a person that just does exactly as they were taught 100% of the way, doesn't keep up with the times, doesn't understand how things change, does everything the slow old way to do it. What you want is you want an electrician that was an apprentice, that learned how to be an electrician. And then they became a journeyman electrician, and they started saying, I have slightly different ways of doing this, but I have a foundation of which I understand how to be an electrician. I've found slightly faster ways to do this. I've found cleaner ways of like putting the wires together so that they look good. And the guy that taught me didn't really care so much that they looked perfect, but I want them to be aesthetically pleasing and also easier to work on. I want to improve and build upon the foundation that society gave me. But when you refuse to be socialized and you think we should abolish gender, you abolish the utility and function that gender has, which is understanding that men and women are biologically different and society has different roles for us, and that it's important that we recognize that men are different and there are certain things that men must do because of these differences.
So we'll go to Tuna, Kobe, Corey, and Lackley.
So I agree with you, Scott, to a certain point, but the question of what a man is a two-tier thing. I think what you describe is a person who is going through boyhood, who is learning masculinity. I don't think we're gonna, or maybe some people, some of the abolitionists want to get rid of all masculinity, all femininity. But what I'm saying is that a person is only a man. A person is only a man when they've actually learned that counter pressure and then they've stepped out of it in order to figure out their entire uniqueness. I think it would be a failure of us to say that a person becomes a man once they learn masculinity and learn manhood and those things that are necessary to do. We have a second question here, which is like, how developed as a man are you? How along the process of of becoming are you? Because in becoming is first, yes, and I think biologically unavoidable. We know that around the age 9 until about 18, 11 to 18, you are going to build that competency, and it's going to be within an identity. And the main identity that we find is in our sex and in the role that our sex has. At the end of that point, though, we then go into manhood, I think, only after that pubescence and that learning. Until then, all we've done is learn masculinity as a boy, and then the jumping point only goes from there.
So I would have one slight critique of what you're saying, right? Which is that everyone on this panel has recognized that there are feminine and masculine traits within everybody, right? So the idea that it's just masculinity that we're learning makes no sense unless you already prescribe to gender abolitionism and you think it is a patriarchal myth designed to like separate the sexes or something, or some other philosophical reason to justify why gender is bad, right? What you're learning is how your masculinity is expressed in society and what those roles are and what those expectations are in what we live. You know, if you're in the 1800s, that expresses itself differently. Men wear high heels and women wear flats, right? There are different, yeah. There's aesthetics, there's behavior, there's all of these different things where you fit into a cohesive society, and you're learning how you as a gender express both your masculinity and your femininity. And then you learn that further, and then you can branch out, experiment, and progress forward. But it's important that society has those roles, or it's starting tabula rasa with every fucking generation, because there's no framework for which people can grow into and learn from.
Okay.
Can I reply lightly to Scott and then
let the two never respond, and then we'll go to you, Kobe.
So just as a light response, I think that we'll come into a little bit more agreement if I can like use language, lean a little bit more into your objectivist leanings. The same thing that makes a great man is what makes a man to me. The same thing that makes to me, I would define man as great man. It is a person who has stepped out merely of gender, because gender is nothing compared to being a man. Being a man is to stand out of it, to launch himself out of that role. If you are simply learning gender, you are but a boy. If you have not yet learned gender, you are not a boy nor a man. But until you stand above it, you're not a man. So maybe great man is the word, but that's my point.
Let's go
disagree, but that's
to
okay.
let's go to Kobe, Corey, Lactoid.
Okay. So I'm gonna agree with something Scott said. I'm gonna try to agree with something that everybody says a little bit. I think that when Scott said with the idea that these gender roles are not rigid categories, that if you don't click the boxes, you're not there, that they're models that we can give young people and growing people they can then build from. I agree 1,000,000%. I think we should also, I feel like multiple people have just restated the same point of saying, isn't it interesting that anything we say that's positive about femininity is also a trait that's positive about masculinity? Yeah, that's not that big of a pointing out in my opinion. Any positive human trait is going to be a positive human trait in general, almost by definition, right? The things that like, if you asked a woman on the street, what are positive traits of femininity, or many of the things they would say, leadership, independence, self-starter, whatever, are things that we would agree that any human being should be able to. Any human being should be independent, have leadership goals, or whatever. I think that something that you were saying is that there's a difference between boyhood and manhood, and being able to go, being able to understand in your process here. I think we can all agree here. Something I tried to write down in the prompt. There are very few manhood teachers right now, and I'm sure we can all agree they're very controversial. The ones that exist. That's a big issue, and it's a really
male
big
teacher.
Please chill. It's a big issue that the places that people are going to are TikTok, internet, Jordan Peterson, whatever, and not they're like I think we can all agree that in the modern American society, there are not a ton of places you can go to in your community unless you're part of a church or you're really involved in a school or something like this. I think that's not the greatest. Let me take a look at my notes here, just really quick. How about this? I don't want to talk as much as maybe I want to. To put us back onto track, I think that one of the things that has begun to develop more in in my life at least, men are much more likely to actually have emotional conversations, to be willing to have deep emotional conversations. I've cried with almost all of my close friends. It's not something that we view itself as weird and gay. From what I understand, that is not the case. That is what would be 2 or 3 generations ago. That is something that I think we need to hold on to. Something that, in my opinion, I've been currently reading Bell Hooks, and she makes a lot of really good criticisms about this. Which is, she basically says feminists have been telling men to go and sit in the woods and talk to each other, and then men go sit in the woods and talk to each other, and feminists make fun of them and make fun of them and how silly they're being. It's like, bro, sometimes you look silly when you cry. Sometimes you ugly cry. Sometimes you say silly stuff. Sometimes you need to go in the woods and pretend that you're a fucking Viking to do it, right? And we should be more open about this. There are no more rituals. There are very few rituals that boys stop being boys and become men. It used to be when you got your first girlfriend. People are getting their girlfriends at later and later dates now. It used to be when you lost your virginity. People are losing their virginity at less and less rates. It's unsurprising that we have this huge glut of grown-up boys that are interested in these kind of right-wing figures, whether it's any kind of rabbit hole. It's unsurprising to me. I would hope that we can move a little bit beyond just pointing out that, isn't it interesting that there's flexibility in the boundaries? Of course that's the case. It doesn't mean the same thing to be a man between 2 cities. Let's move on to, what do we want to cultivate? What do we want to keep on? What do we want to, there's some right-wing people. Have there been additions? What are the soy things that have been added to masculinity that you want to do without, that you find is the overcorrections? What are the overcorrections? What are the undercorrections? In my opinion, one of the correct corrections is it is becoming more open to be an emotional man. That's something I like.
Let's go to Corey, the Lactoid, and Aiko. I want to say something here at some point as well. Again, I'm loving this so far. Corey, please.
Well, maybe this will prompt you to say something. So, because I want to bring up something that you brought up in the first point that you made of I think you alluded to the phrase that you used, more freedom, or you want more freedom. And I would say, where do you get the most freedom? I would say you get the most freedom recognizing that these concepts of masculine and feminine don't mean anything, or are completely arbitrary. I don't know why you would put yourself in a box of this is what it means to be a man and masculinity, and therefore this is the box and the arena that I must operate in, and it'll only be that, and I can't step outside the box. And I'm not anti that. That's why I phrase it. Just ask yourself the question, what type of person or human that you want to be. I'm not anti-socialization. Sort of to what Doobie was alluding to earlier. As it seems he's closely examined things, all of the things that he used to want for a guy, he recognizes that he would also want them for a girl, or however they identify. where it's not really about the gender roles. It's like, what type of person do you want to be? And turns out there should not be that much differences, at least in terms of the person you want to cultivate, of how you would want to be. And to sort of maybe highlight that or not, just to maybe, so I'd ask the question to Tunachip. You basically asked, I think you phrased it of like, I think you said,
What is the destruction
a
of
great man,
categories
as
create
in
more
like,
freedom?
basically, my question
It just creates
is there a difference in your
confused
mind
people.
between a great man and a great woman?
No, I think that to be great and to be a great man, a great woman there's one difference, which is how you got there, which is that you
Sure, but the end
surpassed
goal.
yourself from something. But to me, the idea is that gender actually plays in antithesis at a certain point with self-actualization. But until you have fully understood that counter, that foil to your uniqueness, you can never actually know what in your uniqueness makes sense to you. It's kind of like imagine saying that you don't like strawberries even though you've never eaten strawberries. Imagine saying that you don't like doing X without having done X. The big thing with gender, and I think what we've figured out bit by bit, is there is a high statistical probability of people feeling affirmed by things that their body and their tradition and the tradition of how those bodies relate to one another. There is a high probability that will be congruent for you. So in many ways, a person who like transitions, in my opinion, as long as it comes from a genuine place of actualization, becomes a great woman or becomes a great man, whatever you want to call it, through their rejection of that gender model, in the same way that somebody who decides, you know what, I'm not going to beat my kid, even though my understanding of masculinity is a certain punishment axis or something, but I will still instill a sense of masculinity inside of him to see whether or not, because I know statistically likely he is going to have to go through that in order to become an independent and full person, regardless of sex or gender.
Okay, so I just want to ask one quick brief follow-up. So it's not like I recognize like basically how you get to the end goal might be different, but it seems like the answer to the question that I posed of like the answer is no. There's not really any difference between a great man and a great woman, and it's just like to become a great human being is the end goal. Just different processes.
The goal is the same, but the way to get there is different. And it's different because of the world they're living in and the way that world engages with them. Of course.
Okay.
I have a question. I just want to say this. Being able to make a logical argument that human beings it's illogical for them to like the models of gender, that doesn't get us anywhere. 99% of all human beings feel quite attached to their gender. The fact we are having a discussion about transgender people and that is taking so much of our discussion in modern context is because some people still feel so suffocated by a certain gender role. We need to make room for them to live other gender roles. This matters. Having gender roles, people like them. Just being able to say, well, technically, I'm from, that doesn't get us anywhere. People like this, and if the progressive side, the side that wants to have discussions about why Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate are harmful, if they forego and they say, well, hey, listen, we should more explore why we should abolish gender, the 100% of the gender conversation is open to a side that I don't think is very helpful. I'd be more curious, we've talked so much about why masculinity doesn't exist. I want to talk about what do we want to keep about it.
I don't see freedom.
Hold on. I'll let you add something quick, but then Lactoid has to come next, and Scott will go after.
Yeah, I just want to respond. It was interesting that you were saying that. We're going to take it in another direction, because the trans people in my life that I know perform masculinity and femininity in very sort of traditional ways. They just sort of like they're transitioning to a different gender than when they were assigned at birth. They actually are quite married to these ideas of masculinity. And in fact, there's a lot of conflict now between gender abolitionists and trans people, because it's really trans people who are see masculinity as sort of a way of affording them the ability to sort of act out the sex that they weren't, at birth. And so I don't necessarily know that it's transness that's being overly represented here. I think maybe those are in the same category as the other 99% of that Kobe was talking. I just wanted to point that out, because I think the positions that people from different communities occupy is a little bit more complicated than we're presenting.
Lactoid. Before you go, I want to say to you though, like, I've been like you guys have all keep like sparking new thoughts in me as we go along here. But Lactoid, on your end, we were talking about like not defining ourselves in relation to each other. It like, do you think that like a lot of that friction that we're seeing is that like people think they are a failure because they can't perform the role that is expected of them by the other gender, right? Like I am a failure as a man because I can't be a protector, or at least a narrowly defined protector that people are expecting of me. And so to create a better form of masculinity, we have to disregard that, right? Disregard that what a woman might see of us if we are truly a protector. Like find some solace within ourselves and then go back at it. Is that where you're trying to get to before?
Sort of. I'll explain this, and this is also going to be partially this is a response to Scott as well. So to answer your question though, Prime, I think the point I was trying to get at is I think intent is what matters here, right? Independence is the virtue, and I think independence is a masculine virtue, and I think we should teach men this. But my argument is that for a long time, people are viewing themselves as desiring this or viewing this kind of masculine goal, not because of the intrinsic benefits that come from this or the societal benefits or, the actual role fulfillment and the benefits that come from that, which I largely agree with Scott on. But instead based entirely on more of a, I think what a lot of these like pickup artists and what Andrew Tate and some of these other people that are mentioned sort of peddle is not necessarily based on that, but more based on if you do this, like the girls are going to like you. Well, it shouldn't be based on that. It shouldn't be based on who's going to like me or who's not. It should be based on like what's the best way to really solidify my role in society and to be the best man that I can be. And so, and it's also dependent, right? You're basing your masculinity not based on what you can offer the world and taking care of yourself and taking care of your family, but you're basing yourself on what the opinion is of like women around you who might not even like you, right? And that people base so much of their self-esteem off that, and that's just like the wrong place. It shouldn't be based on this sort of like, well, they're not fucking me, they're not looking at me right, like this sort of like lizard brain, like I fuck kind of thing, but more based on like the higher order level brain functions of what is my place in society, how can I maximize that, how can I be a good man, right? So, and this is kind of in relation to Scott, I agree with almost everything you said, right? I do think there's biological differences. I think gender roles and stratification are both inevitable and in some circumstances good. I think I think women generally are more likely to be better suited for childcare, right? That is a very controversial topic, I suppose, but it shouldn't be, because there's very clear biological organs that allow that to be the case. So yeah, I don't think that we actually disagree that much, Scott. I'm just concerned about why men are pursuing the virtues that are supposed to be masculine. It should be for like front brain shit of like, be a good person, be a good man, control what needs to be controlled kind of thing, and not sort of this the lizard brain, must come, which I think most men are running on, which I think is a major problem.
Yeah, I think it's the exact opposite of me. First and foremost, this idea of like getting rid of gender stereotypes and getting rid of gender roles and gender abolitionism is like a form of freedom. It's not freedom, because freedom at its most base definition, right, is the ability to choose. And when you destroy the framework that allows us to engage with reality, right, the world is real. Like, we have functions. We are in conflict with nature. We are in conflict with the promulgation of the species against nature itself. The need to eat, the need for shelter, the need to progress, the need to shape man's environment. All of these things are a physical reality of the material world. And when you destroy the framework that allows us to be able to grow into that, you don't give more freedom What you do is you limit their ability to choose, because you limit their ability to be able to make meaningful categories and distinctions and understand where they can fit in a society that does have needs. Society and gender roles demand protectors because nature demands that people be protected. And society and gender roles demand nurturers because nature demands that we have that. Now, these are functions at the ends of the distribution that can be taken, by either biological sex, right? But the point is that we for 99% of people, it is congruent, and these are the roles that they will be expected to fill. And furthermore, it is not tragic, but good that the sexual marketplace regulates this behavior, these aesthetics, and these things. It is good that women are the sexual selector of the species that choose superior mates, that are able to fulfill roles that are needed in our environment better than those men that are incapable of doing so. That is a positive thing, that we are biologically constructed to want to come, for the lizard brain need come, and then to go, well, how do I come? And then they go, oh, well, women want these certain things, and then you fulfill those roles. Now, how you fulfill those roles is a part of being a man. How you fulfill those roles is you grow into what society expects from most people, and then you challenge those roles in your own life in ways that you are able to progress society, your community, your family, and the individual self farther. But you need that framework, or else you're just in this liminal fucking space of nothing, and you have no idea what's going on. And guess what? Your genes don't come, and your genes fucking die.
Okay, I think I need to address this, because I think you sort of agree, but then you disagree with kind of the lizard brain proposal that I'm making, right? I think that maybe this is a new development. I don't think it's a new development. When you have men that understand kind of the higher order level of reason of why they're doing things, and are making decisions based on their own future well-being and the well-being of their family and the well-being of society, this is the sort of logic and rationality that I'm advocating to be instilled in men, instead of lizard brain must come. Because lizard brain must come, what that gets you is infidelity. It gets you OnlyFans. It gets men start to believe well, I can just come, and that is what masculinity
Let me
is.
respond quickly, right? What you were talking about is what I'm referencing as second stage masculinity, or man, as opposed to third stage. Is that we are in a society that devalues masculinity to such an extent that you have boys that have not become men, and that we have to recognize that those are part of who we are. Lizard brain must come as part of who we are as men. The fact that violence is a necessary part of the natural order is something we have to recognize. But what you need to do is you need to channel and integrate that into reason. You need to we need rough and tumble play. We need fathers. We need men that know how to fucking fight. And we need to play with those boundaries to a certain extent. And then we need reason and rationality to be able to integrate into a whole man.
No, it's not. It's not integrated in. It's constricted by rationality, right? The lizard brain needs to be controlled. And what I'm trying to emphasize here is that all the bad things that you can point to, and the kind of the degeneration of masculinity, comes from a lack of respect about what the actual purpose of it is, right? You have a guy who thinks he's masculine because he gets 30 people pregnant. And that's sort of emphasized in our society now. You're getting all the bitches. No,
right, but you're agreeing with me. That is the consequence of having a society that has rejected traditional masculinity to such a degree that any tinge of masculinity is seen as positive. We are so far gone that being an anti-hero is enough to be a hero.
So let's go to Corey and Tuna.
Well, yeah, I just want to maybe quickly address the point of again, you can absolutely still make choices when gender is abolished. You have the most choice. You can literally, it's whatever, the marketplace of ideas, the marketplace of gender roles. You can pick and choose. I think I've made choices. I don't know everyone on the panel.
If you have a marketplace of gender roles, do you know what you're gonna do? You're just gonna recreate fucking gender roles, dude. Because for 99% of people, man and woman make sense Like, at least in some degree, from from a Bayesian analysis perspective, right? Like, you're gonna have most men fitting most of the categories, and then society is gonna say these are traditional traits that we want in the gender role. So but in order to create gender abolishment, you cannot allow people to have the freedom to determine what is and isn't man and woman. You have to use force and coercion to destroy those concepts and indoctrination, and you have to destroy children's ability to make meaningful categories, because otherwise the gender roles will just
I
come
reject
back.
that notion outright.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll leave it there for now. But like, yeah, like that total framework, I would reject outright. But that's a larger conversation. But like, you can pick and choose what your roles are. I think I made sure. Like, I think I'm the only one on this panel with an actual STEM degree.
So 99% of people will pick one role, right, and assigned with their gender, and then that won't be a gender role of some sort, just because you have the freedom to pick and choose.
I would reject the 99%. I would reject, as in, like, I don't know for sure, but I don't think we're living in a gender abolished society, so I don't know how it would play out. And so, like, you're just like,
we have biology. Like, in order to destroy it, you have to indoctrinate. That's the only way to do it.
No, I would reject that framing outright as well. Like, other than like whatever, going back to my position, like I would indoctrinate what it is to be a human and a person, and put options on the table, and ask yourself that question of like what type of person, sort of like to Tunish's point, or
this is how you get more Andrew Tates, because you will destroy the idea of men, and then more people will come back with just a hint of that shit and will be super popular, and everyone will call them based, even though they're fucking stupid ass pimps, because society is begging for masculinity to come back.
He is a lizard-brain masculine like character, though, right? Like, he is like the embodiment of like the lizard.
Yes.
Sure. I want to go to Tuna. I like to step in, and Kobe.
Okay, Fabian, I don't think that you're wrong about this like base nature that is like unavoidable, and that's the reason that we don't need to double down on it, because we are actually trying to offer an alternative to, as you called it, the secondary male. The idea of rationality, this is what separates us from just being cum pigs. This is what separates us from being just animal, pure animal. We are the supreme rational animal. We changed the world from being a world where we run around just finding a hole to fuck and come inside of, into being a world where we have all of these stronger, more generative, more creative, more valuable forms of action that I will also agree are working off of the same biology, that same dopamine loop that we evolved through that idea, but through rationality, we're able to subvert. We can subvert it in good ways and negative ways. If you want to try and subvert that, if you're saying that the subversion makes it so that people want to go back to that animal masculinity, and that any sort of hint of it, including the Tates and everything, that this is what's going on, I don't think that the idea is to return to an animal, full animal, and then look at Andrew and be like, you're like a pussy version of this. What people want is a rational masculinity that is understood from its own perspective, under its own terms, from a rational terms. It's no longer, like that's what I'm saying, you don't get it from the role, you get it from, it's like,
but it's a process. You can't just magically go to an integrated masculinity. You have to be socialized into roles that are important for society, that most people adhere to. And then you have, if you have reason and you have will and you strive, you break out of those roles. You cannot be an electrician that knows how to be an electrician. You have to be taught how to be an electrician, and then you can be a better electrician.
Scott, we agree, Scott. Nobody here disagrees with that. I think most people on the abolition argument, what they're trying to say is that masculinity and femininity as roles and forces inside of the world are going to find people that want to fall into it. Even Corey, on the most liberal version of this, is saying that people are just going to choose in their development which of those two roles ends up working better for them. I'm not necessarily on that. I do think that we need to test people against the thing that is most likely to be powerful for them. But what I'm trying to say is that if you think that Andrew Tate is existing because people are loosening up on what form of gender expression people are going for, or like how masculine men can be, I'm going to say no. The reason that we're getting Andrew Tates is actually because of how brain dead our way of explaining masculinity is. It's like a speed limit right now. People understand the value of masculinity from a role compliance perspective, not from a rational value of the action itself. Think about those fucking signs on the highway that say, please wear your seatbelt. No one wants to. If you're not wearing your seatbelt, it's because you're fucking stupid. You don't know that the fact that a seatbelt is saving your life. Saying please wear it is a terrible argument. Saying wear it or else is a terrible argument. What we should be doing is putting up fucking banners like the abortion protesters of just dead bodies from fucking
connect that
car
argument? Can you connect that argument? Because you made a claim. Can you connect that argument that the reason Andrew Tate exists, the reason we have a red pill movement, the reason we have like these increased toxic masculinity and pickup culture is because of something that is innate to humans? How does that make sense? Are you saying Andrew Tates were always popular and 10 years ago they were super popular and 20 years ago they were super popular? Because this is a new phenomenon. So how does that make sense if that's an innate part of man?
No. I'm saying that he's playing on an innate thing, but he's playing on the innate feature is to fill in and belong. That's the thing that it is in two categories. One, as a sexually appealing person, and then two, as a successful man. This is the loneliness culture that is being played on both sides. Both sexes got this. On the male side, we've got do this and women will want to suck your dick. Do this and your friends will know you're the alpha. On the woman side, we've got all this weird woo-woo spirituality. People are doing fucking rituals in their basement trying to be in touch with a divine feminine. On both sides, we have people that don't actually understand the value of masculine or feminine prescription.
The two don't make any sense.
Don't hold them internally and rationally.
You're not connecting the two. What you have is a new phenomenon. No, you're not. What you have is a new phenomena of like the red pill community and men desperately searching for masculinity in an age that 20 years ago this was not the case. You see what I'm saying?
I know what I have
and you're saying, see, look, it's just monkey brain. And it's like, we'll connect that argument.
No, it's not just monkey brain. It's monkey brain plus our uniquely alienated culture due to the economic and technological changes that have happened in our society. The fact that Andrew Tate is on the black box talking to as many people as possible, and that everybody spends all their time on the phone, all their time at their jobs, spending fucking 10-hour, 5 days a week type of jobs, and the fact that they are so disconnected from male groups where they understand masculinity through evidence and not through this idea that this is going to get me the things I don't have. We understand the value of masculinity through a negative understanding. We understand the value of masculinity because we don't have it, but we don't actually understand what makes having it good. We just know that we're supposed to have it and we don't. That's why Tate is so appealing, because he has it, we don't have it, we simply want it, and the first person that offers it, just like a fucking gang member shooting up, if you don't have a dad, the fact that he's a masculine role model and he's alpha, even though he's a fucking idiot, you're gonna go to the Andrew Tate, you're gonna go to the fucking abuser. You're not gonna go to the person who has a strong, competent masculinity. You're gonna go to a person that has a bargain bin fucking easy route to masculine appearance, an artifice of masculinity.
Yeah, there's a reason that's working now.
I want to move forward. So we're gonna go to Kobe, Doobie, and Corey. Kobe, Doobie, Corey.
Hasn't substantiated any of his claims.
Ike, I don't think you've raised your hand, right? So just want to make sure. I don't think you. Okay.
I'm gonna rephrase.
I just. You know what? Corey, Kobe, sorry. Before are you going to pick up the thread that was just dropped, or are you going to go to something new?
Please go ahead and say what you want to say, and then I will say after.
Okay. Well, I wasn't going to pick up the thread, so I didn't want to break the conversation then. But this idea that our friend Scott has said a few times, talking about like 99% of the genders will pick like the gender roles, right? Like, I think you've said this before, Scott, in past conversations that like maybe looking at gender is like, not like a duality, but like a bimodal distribution, right? And that
homostatic property clusters.
Okay, yeah. So most people will fall into, at least this is the way I see it. Most people will fall into one or the other. And but they are connected, right? And you'll find people within these margins, but like they will still be men or women, right? Like you'll look at them and maybe you'll think they're quirky, maybe you think they're different, but like this is clearly a man or a woman being a man or a woman, right? Even though they
society needs
other
jesters.
Yeah. But so my question is, right, and this picks off, I forget if it was Corey or someone else, who talked about like the great man and the great person. But like I'm wondering, if imagine the most, feminized soy man that you can think of, right? A socialist, maybe, right? So imagine that, and like who has just purely feminine traits, but doesn't call himself a female, right?
Mhm.
Could you ever call that? Can you call that person a great person, right? Without being a great man. Can you call that person a great man?
Yeah.
Even though they don't. Go ahead.
So throughout all of mythology and throughout and mythos, you can see the idea of the jester, right? The Lokis of mythology, right? There are always going to be these few people that don't fit into a category, right? But the jester fills an extremely important role in society, right? Just like the stand-up comedian, right? He can criticize the king and get away with it, right? Without being killed. It's kind of almost the idea of free speech and stand-up comedy also kind of comes from the idea of the person that sits outside of the category. But you cannot construct society based off of the fact that there are outliers from the category in the abolishing the categories themselves.
Sure. And I wasn't even going that far, right? I was just wondering that, like, is that person, that feminized individual, like, can they ever gain the stamp of great man, like, while being, like, having all those feminine traits? They have the body of a man. They call themselves like, in terms of like a male, like they don't eschew any of that. It's just that everything they do is feminine, right? If that person accomplishes great things and is a great part of the community, however you define that, can
you
be
define
a
yellow? Can you define yellow? Can you explain yellow in a coherent way to where a blind person would immediately understand what you mean by yellow?
I was gonna go on like the physics description. No, I cannot do that.
It's light of a certain wavelength, typically between 650 and 800 nanometers.
No, the color yellow. Seeing the color yellow. Describe seeing yellow.
Yeah, I can't. No.
So what you have to do in order to do that, right, is you have to take a bunch of things that we kind of understand that are tangential, and then like people understand what you're talking about, right? Like you say it's a bright color. And then people are like, oh, bright. Like you might even say the wavelength, and so they can kind of associate it with other things.
To a blind
what
person,
you do,
right?
Right. No. Well, the problem is that you can't define yellow in a meaningful way to a blind person because they have to see it to understand it.
You cut out. Am I the only one?
Did I cut out? I'm sorry.
No, I still heard you.
Okay,
Right,
maybe
so
it was just me.
The problem is that you have a bunch of little things, right, that you categorize around this, right, and then you begin to understand in a meaningful way what yellow is, but you can't really describe yellow. You can't really perfectly write a definition where people understand what it is unless they've already seen it and they already know it.
Toby,
It's the same thing with man.
But did that answer my question though? The question I presented to you, and the rest of the panel. And when we get to you, I'd like to, if you guys can interact with that question. I love it if you did. But like, did that answer my question?
But what I mean is that like the way that we understand man, right, is we understand a whole bunch of things we associate with man. And so some of those things are not, let's look at woman, for example, right? One of the things we associate with women, for example, is the ability to carry children. But you wouldn't say that an infertile woman is not a woman, right?
Some monsters would, but
well,
yeah.
some might, right? But we understand that you are a real woman, despite the fact that you don't meet one of the things that we put in this grouping that helps us understand what this thing is. So you're jester, you're a great person that does great things, but is feminine in a whole bunch of aspects, right? Well, it depends on what you mean by feminine in a whole bunch of aspects, because if there's enough things that put them in the category of man, especially if they're a great person, right? They call themselves a man. They're a biological male. They've achieved greatness in some way. They likely are a man, despite the fact that maybe they're androgynous in their aesthetics. Maybe they have a high-pitched voice. Like these things wouldn't exclude them from man, despite the fact that some things would. But you also wouldn't necessarily call them manly, And the reason you wouldn't call them manly is because they eschew a bunch of the things that we associate with man, despite them being a great person and potentially a great man.
Let's go to Kobe, Doobie, Corey, and Lactoid. Did you have your hand? Oh, okay, we'll go to Aiko, and then Lactoid and Tuna, right?
This like teleology discussion is making me no longer want to be a man, woman, or human being anymore. So I will. I'll move on. It seems like people have been advancing some ideas as to why masculinity is in crisis, or whatever word you want to use. It seems like some people are kind of saying monkey brain plus social alienation. People are focusing too much on their damn monkey brain, plus the fact that people don't got no damn jobs, OnlyFans. People are watching damn Andrew Takes. It's easy answers so that you get the damn women. Work out. I think there's some truth to that. I definitely feel I'm a young man, 25 years old. I definitely feel as if my monkey brain do be controlling me many times. I feel like I think with my dick and not with my brain more than I would like to admit. And to be honest, I do feel quite socially alienated. So I'll doff my hat there to you there. The other one I'm less skeptical of, just decide to not identify as a man, is kind of what I'm getting. I'm being a little straw man-y here, but that's kind of what I get when it's the whole like, well, any category we give that for a woman technically could be applied for a man. So what are we going to do? At the end of the day, maybe 99% is too big. Maybe it's true that's not even two categories. Maybe there's some factions within man, but I feel like a man. I want to feel like a man. I like feeling like a man. I feel like I'm getting patted on the head by society when I do it. Maybe I'm just a normie and I'm an NPC, but I can agree to you that a lot of people in my personal life and a lot of people that I see online agree with me, that they feel like as if they're not able to fulfill the social role they want to for a variety of reasons. And just being told to not identify with those things is not really getting us anywhere, and saying, well, you have a monkey brain plus a fucked up society. Again, not really getting me anywhere. Jordan Peterson, I've actually been reading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life recently at the gym. And I would say his take is a little bit overly individualistic. It doesn't really, he'll give like one sentence little reminders about maybe you'll have circumstances outside of your control. But a lot of what he says is stuff that I think needs to account for the social alienation part way more than it does. And so I agree that that's like a negative. We can't just go down that road, right? I think I can agree to the Tates of the world are far too monkey brain. I think we can all agree that we don't just exist in like a evolutionary psychology hellscape where women are just like trying to, hypergamy or hypergamy or whatever the term they use.
Yeah, you got it.
The question is though, here's my question. This would be for everybody. Who are some men that you think other men should be listening to? Or just some figures. Maybe it can be a woman, it can be a sage old text, whatever it is. What are some people? What are some podcasts? What are some individual thinkers? Just everybody for think about that. I'd be very curious. I'm 25 years old. I'm collecting role models. I think we can all agree that we can give big lists of people to not listen to, people to not be. But I feel like there's not a lot of discussion of that. So I'd be very curious. To go into a little bit more though, I talked to a friend one time, and he said something that I thought was very smart about what it's like being a man in the modern age. Which is you're either told to hate yourself or to hate society. Either the reason that you're lonely and you can't get a girlfriend and you don't feel like a man, and even if you work out, you still don't feel good. That's because society is fucked. We live in late capitalism, or we live in globalism, or we live in we don't have enough churches, and that is the reason. You should hate society and we should try to fix society, and that it's not your fault. Or the other side, it says, actually, it's your fault. You decided to like the wrong things. Did you not get the memo? We had the sexual revolution. You're supposed to be a progressive man. Get with the picture. Oh, actually, did you not realize that you're just a man and that you're supposed to be a Bronze Age barbarian conquering the local steppe people? And if you're not that, then you're not a man. That seems to be the two poles. If you said earlier that masculinity and femininity are like the two poles, those are like the two poles of the man discussion. Either hate yourself or hate society. And I think neither of these get us fucking anywhere. And probably Jordan Peterson's a lot closer in 12 Rules for Life version of Jordan Peterson is probably a lot closer to the reality. So, that's my opinion. And then my constructive question would be, who do you listen to? Who do you find guidance in? Who are some people that you wish were more popular?
I wish Kobe was more popular. I think he's pretty cool. Let's go to my man, Doobie, then it'll be Corey, Aiko, Electroid, Tuna, excuse me. I was going to call you Thunder for some reason, I don't know. Doobie.
So Corey, to answer your question, I guess my answer would be like, I don't know. I can't think of anybody I could point to, but like, hey, model your life after this person. Man or woman. So yeah, that's a tough one. And I think that we're maybe like missing the point. This like why these kind of red pill figures are becoming more and more popular. and I think it's absolutely tied to the idea of like gender abolition, or gender dissolution, right? The idea that the lines between the duties of the genders are being blurred. Women are getting more college degrees and making more money. It's not the case that a guy can just be like, oh well, I'm gonna be the breadwinner now, and I'm gonna have a wife and kids, and she's gonna stay home and raise them. Because there are plenty of women who do all those things, right? They're the breadwinners. So I think the lines are being blurred, and this has left a lot of men looking for purpose, right? So I think we kind of need to talk about the fact that these lines are blurred, and what we understand to be masculinity needs to shift. It needs to change. And I don't know how we do that in such a way that, and this is going to annoy Corey, that doesn't lead to us just saying, hey, here's a list of positive traits. A man should be these things. And that list is going to apply to women too, right? So maybe that's not interesting, but I think that's the reality. So if that's the reality, maybe the answer here is we should stop focusing on masculinity. We should stop focusing on femininity. We should start teaching people to just be good people. Right? Maybe that's we're like kind of in a transitional phase right now as like a society where these lines are starting to blur and people are starting to feel it. So I can understand feeling like you're getting patted on the head when you're doing the man thing, right? I absolutely get that feeling too, right? Because I want to be a provider, I want to be a protector, I want to be all those things, all the things that I was raised to be. So I can totally get that being like attractive, and I can understand that being like something that you don't want to aspire to, even if it's just like an arbitrary list of things that apply to both genders. So I think we're just like in a transitional phase right now, and I think we just need to pull away from the lines, I guess, the categories. Like, hey, actually, being a good man is just being a good person. Right. And that's it. Like, so because I can't imagine a way to get through this cultural shift where women are making more money, getting college degrees, that doesn't lead us to a position in which our the traditional understanding of gender is massively changed.
So we're gonna go to what?
Could I please engage for a moment with Doobie on this? I think this is really,
Okay.
really interesting. So to Doobie, I agree with you. However, being offered an incomplete, as Fabian said earlier, an incomplete masculinity to me is infinitely more helpful, I'll say, than just being the more generic, be a good person. You see what I'm saying?
Yes and no. Because I guess, so when you say masculinity, what do you mean? Like, is it just like...
I'll try to be more clear. It seems as if, as I move through my life, there are some people that speak about the world and how to be a good person from a perspective that seems to be more so grounded in, for lack of to use the social justice term, my lived experience. Talking about the ways that I move through the world. And it's not just Americans, not just people from our generations, from many people generations. Those are the people, and it's a vast majority of them either are men or are speaking about masculinity. That is who I am talking about. Those people provide much more of a structure for me to try to better myself than the more generic, just role models, good people. That's where I originally was. And I have improved myself through moving away from that and engaging with my masculinity in a more traditional way. And that's just me. But I think that that's something that needs to be given. I'd be curious what you say. What you think?
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. Because again, maybe I'm still dealing with the after effects of the shrooms, right? So my brain is like, fuck. Because before that, I think I'd absolutely, I'd be probably much more firmly on Scott's side. Because I grew up with like a very traditional understanding of gender and masculine roles and all these things, right? And I say I grew up. I'm 34. Until very recently, these are like very strict lines, right? I'm the man. I need to provide. That is my duty, and that's my responsibility. So I don't know. I guess what I can understand, like having that given to you is like having like a guideline, a set of guidelines given to you can be like very, very useful. But what I'm having trouble like understanding is why that set of guidelines needs to be specifically like masculine and not
Because-
just like
Let me answer. We in most of the world is either still a patriarchy or coming out of an extraordinarily patriarchal way of being. Men and women
Yeah.
have very different lived experiences and very different socializations. That's the reason, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think it needs to
okay.
be
So I
forever, but as of right now, I agree. In Star Trek future, I might have a different position, but I'm not Star Trek Kobe. I am 2022 Kobe.
Right.
Or 2023 Kobe. I go on TikTok and the Chinese Communist Party is trying to make me schizophrenic every day. Like I have to deal with that. That's my life, and that's what life
on
of
TikTok.
Andrew-
okay. So what you're asking for, basically is like a set of guidelines for this transitionary period, right? So like we
Absolutely.
haven't, yeah, we
Christopher,
we can't just get rid of the man label yet, but it's not going to be the same as it used to be. What is it right now?
Maybe
I think
my kids don't identify. Maybe my kids are with Corey, and they're just little humans. And they identify as human 105B. But I'm Kobe. I'm a man.
Yeah.
I'm a human.
105B. So I wanted to. We're gonna move on to Corey, Aiko, Lactoid, and Tuna. I just quickly say something. After inspired by what Doobie said, and then thinking about our friends Kobe and Aiko, because they usually take this stance, right? And I'm surprised I haven't heard them from them. But I'm gonna take the historical stance. Like I just wonder if we don't have a proper like sweep of history, right? Like I can't see it because Doobie said something super interesting about this, like transitional state, right? And like societies are in flux all the goddamn time, right? Like there are new ways of being, new ways of interacting with each other, new technologies all throw us for a loop, and like this feels new, but whenever it feels new, it probably isn't, right? It's probably that many societies have gone through exactly this in the past. And right. I'm reminded, because I was watching something on China, right? And because the Chinese Communist Party are like right now trying to impose a masculinity, because there's like that whole feminized K-pop type of thing that's popular in Asia now, right? And so they hate that, like this the CCP party hates seeing that within their pop stars. So like, well, you have to be more masculine, right? Or you just can't be a pop star. And so there's a transition there. But they talk about like in like different points in China, in the video I saw, right? Like there's just like an ebb and flow of this, right? Of like being quote unquote more masculine and feminine, or however you like to define that. So it feels like we've done this, and we're just doing this again for our particular corner of the world. Yeah. Let's go to Corey, Aiko, back to it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to correct the record. I might have misspoken earlier. I can't remember when I attempted to define yellow. I put the visible color spectrum, I think, out from 650 to 800 nanometers. No, the visible color spectrum is 400 to 800 nanometers. Just want to correct the record. But to address
now define yellowness. Define yellowness. Define the property of yellow.
It's a Coldplay song. The feeling you get.
There you go.
So Kobe, to answer your attempt to answer your question in terms of things that I would recommend you listen to or podcasts. So I would recommend the Rich Roll podcast. Great podcast. Rich Roll, ultra marathon runner. They have recovered from alcoholism, and they are vegan, and they have a great podcast. They speak to actual experts on a range of subjects, and I would say they're, in my opinion, a good role model. And I take your point, okay? I mean, given what you've described, that let's say a bad map is better than no map. But I would say to sort of what Doobie brought up is like, he seems to be sort of like more moving in the direction of like emphasizing being a good person. And I think that speaks to my opening statement, as in ask yourself the type of question of, or move away from like, what type of man, what type of person and human do you want to be? And that what I would say is like there is a map to being a good person. That's why like I pose that question to Tuna Chip of like, is there a difference between a great man and a great woman? And yes, I would even recognize myself that probably the process is different, but the ultimate end goal is the same. And so I can, let's say, empathize with your journey, but just recognize that Yeah, I would just more emphasize that being a good person is the ultimate end goal, and that to limit yourself of like, or rather emphasizing and limiting yourself by concepts like masculinity and femininity is, well, just limiting. And I don't know why you'd ever want to put yourself like in a box like that.
I view it as not a limitation, but an orientation. It is.
Yeah, I understand for you now, given like, sorry to cut you off. But yeah.
Not just for me. Tons of people want this. This is the reason that people like Jordan Peterson and To Entertain are popular is because tons of people want this. They want their route through the canyon.
Yeah, I agree. A bad mat lad. That's why, like, I'm trying to provide.
I thank you for
recognize.
very much. I think you're right.
And I'm not saying I have all the answers. That's why it's like, I would agree. As much as I strongly dislike and disagree with virtually everything, or a lot of things that Jordan Peterson says, there are some good things that you can extract from. I would just say that they're much better role models, and that you can get all the same positive stuff, and you don't have all the crappy, like literal, I would say, whatever, metaphorical shitty baggage associated with it.
I'm sure perhaps you'll agree with me here. There's like no other book that is comparable. Just 10 rules that a young man can follow to try to get himself in a better position. There are other that exist in the English language, but in the modern political climate, I'm sure you would agree with me. He's the one.
No, Rich Roll wrote a book called Finding Ultra. I would say that's a better book.
But I'm sure you agree. He's not anywhere near as popular as Jordan Peterson. I think that's part of the issue.
Let's go to Aiko. Lactoid tuna.
Just one thing real quick. I wanted to steelman Corey and just say that I think when he's talking about gender abolitionism, I'm starting to think this is really more about like abolitionism for oneself, right? Not necessarily imposing it on society at large, although that misrepresents what's being said there. But then there's a little bit of a contradiction here, because Fabian sort of describes this as Corey's position having something to do with like being in a very rare like portion, Prime talked about this bimodal distribution, and that if we are to think that 99% of people live in this world where we still have sort of traditional gender roles, if that's true, if that 99% figure is right, then there is no crisis for men and boys, and there is no reason for people to run to Jordan Peterson or to Red Pillars or anything like that, because 99% of the world is just the way it clings to traditional gender roles, just like the world always has. My suspicion is that it's messier than that, which is to say that people in that 99% are not cleaving as hard and fast to those identities as we used to, and that some of those roles have been challenged over the past 50 to 80 years with the rise of feminism and with the empowerment of women and with other things that have nothing to do with the breaking down of gender roles in the recent 20 years, I'd say. And
yeah, so
it's not really 99%, is it? Like, not to the same hard and fast degree that one would assume just looking.
Let's change the bimodal.
You're confusing two different things, which is, one is that 99% of people are comfortable in a role of gender, right, and don't want to step out of and abolish that role, that they are fine being a man, which is a category that is vast, right? Like we've gone through this. I know that you know philosophy, right? The rest of the people here are a little bit neophyte in that, right? But you understand that like what we're talking about, a property, like name the property. No one here can do it, right? And that's because it's not possible, right? They're not able to just name the trait that just magically makes one a man or not a man, unless you talk to a TERF and then they just go to biological essentialism, and then that is easily defeated as well, right? So what we're saying is that when the idea of masculinity is sold as negative to society, when males are a part of the Western patriarchal oppressors, when television and marketing is designed to make men look stupid, when government institutions are, incentivizing breaking up of families so that men don't have that framework to even be taught because they don't have a fucking father in the household. And when Kobe is describing that there's a dearth of like positive male role models that we can all look up to and learn that framework even in society at large, that's not an uncomfortability with the idea of being within a gender role such as man. That is a destruction and an attack on the role itself.
Right, but if it's less than 1% of the people that are like subscribing to these ways of thinking, then the other 99% like wouldn't be that uncomfortable in the position that they're in.
No,
right?
no,
They
no.
would
It's not
still
about
have
there's
plenty
less
of
than
role
1%,
models.
right? There are a lot of people that are communists, but they all fucking starve when communism is implemented. Just because they fucking attack something with an idea doesn't mean that they're comfortable within that idea. Once they get their communism, they'll be fucking dead, right? Like the two are not like, it's not saying that less than 1% are the agitators. There are more agitators that are still in the domain of comfortable within that category.
So you're saying there are people who are both challenging gender roles, but are also comfortable being in a gender role themselves.
Hold on, I'm
Is that
dealing
what
with
you're
something in
saying?
my chat. There we go. Sorry. Can you ask that again? Sorry, someone was
Yeah,
like
so it
spamming
sounds
all
to
of
me
my
like you're
channel
saying
point
that there's-
redemptions.
That there are a lot of people who are challenging, but at the same time are comfortable being in a gender role themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
All right, so there's sort of a.
I mean, go
feathering
look at a
to-
feminist ally, right? Go look at a feminist ally. Just think in your just conjure one up in your fucking head, right? They will say all the things they need to say to get laid. I don't know why any woman is stupid enough to trust a male feminist ally. And yet, if you really grill down what it is, they're a fucking man. They're just a skeezy little fucking snake that pretends to be about all of this shit so that they can get some pussy. And we all fucking know it. And that's why whenever you fucking dig up their dirt, all of a sudden you go through their Snapchat history and there's some sus shit in there, right? Like, yeah, there are plenty of people that are agitating against the system that are 100% fine within that gender role.
Okay, but don't you think there'd still be like plenty of room to find role? If we're still talking about 99% of people who like fit in that model, it seems to me that people who are like Corey, who are in that less than 1%, would be the ones like finding at least legitimate, like not the posers like you're talking. But
Imagine two
like
concepts,
legitimate
right?
role models to look up to.
I think you're looking at the 99% and you're looking at an essentialist kind of framework of man, as opposed to like what I was saying, like a homeostatic property cluster and a framework of which we get into that category and then we can eschew that category. Like when I say the 99% are comfortable, right? I am talking about a man that grows up as a boy, learns what masculinity is, does most of the things that how we define men, most of those things, but also might be a fucking fashion model that wears a dress. Right? Like I'm still calling that a man. I'm still calling that a category. The idea is that what we have done is we have the anti-gender role individuals have tried to create it as an essentialist argument when it's not. It's a grouping of properties.
Okay, so you're saying that you can depart from gender roles like to a great degree and still fall in what you're calling the 9%.
Right. What I'm saying is it's a framework that we do and how we define masculinity, and then people depart from those things after it's integrated masculinity, right? That's why I kept trying to use the example of the electrician, right? Is that we all want stage 3. We all want an electrician that does things differently. We all want an
Not too differently.
Right, not too differently. Exactly, right? We don't want stage 1 where the person just thinks they know what they're doing and has no idea what the fuck they're doing. We want someone that follows the framework, learns the rules of the game, which is social interaction, right? And then plays with those rules in the name of progress, both for themselves and as a society, as we discover things that are better.
Okay, so Corey, just let me ask real quick, and then I'll my segment.
It's gotta be really quick because
So Corey, I just want to know, like, to what degree do you think it's acceptable to say that you don't believe in gender in the sense that you don't want like enforced roles or what, but that you can be a gender abolitionist and also still like fully 100% like embrace the roles like of your assigned gender, just for yourself personally?
I don't want.
Would that be contradictory? Like, could you have somebody who believes like what Scott's talking about, believes in terms of theory at least in gender abolitionism, but chooses to like conform to like to
Yeah.
performing
I can see
gender
sort
for
of.
themselves?
Yeah, I guess maybe as a matter of convenience, just as like the point that I was bringing up earlier, like I guess like yeah, a bad map is better than no map, and like I'm not advocating for an abolishment of like all framework, or again, I'm not advocating for an abolishment of like all choices. Like I'm just saying like you have the access to the widest range of choices and the largest framework that is not limiting. If you recognize that these concepts are pretty meaningless and arbitrary.
It's not like listen.
So I gotta go. Lacto's been waiting for so long, and then we gotta go Tuna.
Okay, I want to start off by agreeing with Scott that male feminist allies truly are the most lizard-brained of all men, right? There's a reason why we call them snakes in the grass, because they are purely
As
motivated.
Gucci Mane said, "Snakes in the grass, better cut
Yes.
that shit."
They're motivated by the lizard brain, and they will manipulate in order to get what they want, right? It's not based on any kind of a higher order level goodness. It's instead based entirely on desire, right? Now that you're back, Kobe, I just want to quickly answer. Jesus and Christopher Hitchens, I think, are the two men that I think would be really good to read in terms like to know what like a masculine person should be. I also want to agree with you, Kobe.
I hope for a better outcome for you, though, for sure.
For all
I
of
also
them, for both of them.
want to agree with you, Kobe, as to if you could sum it up to my opinion as the problems are monkey brain and social alienation. Honestly, it kind of that's sort of what I would like chalk it up to. I think monkey brain is sort of related to social alienation here, is because kind of when you're talking about the transition as to the social alienation, right? The transition that we're dealing with, it's okay to have it now because we're transitioning into something different. I understand that we're transitioning to like a different understanding of gender roles. I think gender roles are always going to be there because of some biological reasons. But, there's also an element here of not just transitioning, but perhaps getting back on track as to what the value is. For a long time, at least maybe it wasn't met as it should have been, but the value of masculinity was a large part of it was being a father, right? There's not lizard brain satisfaction necessarily that comes with being a father, being a good father, being a strong father, capable, rational, authoritative, right? Like that stuff is good for you, and it's really good for your higher, there's decisions you can make. The decisions you make to be that, it requires higher order level thinking. But it's very easy if you're not, if that isn't emphasized. Instead, if let's say something else is emphasized, such as maybe a more lizard brain focus version of masculinity, which is getting as many women as possible. These single motherhood rates was brought up by Scott. That's an example again of sort of like maybe a shifting focus on what masculinity is. So I think there's always going to be a level of gender roles here, but shifting away from being a good father and a good citizen and towards just basically giving into your desires. I think that's kind of where men need to improve themselves. And then as to whether is there an attack upon masculinity by society, I do think so. I think it's more based on that idea of being a father and a good citizen. Now that needs to be addressed. But I also think that ultimately men have to work on ourselves in that way and to focus on being good fathers, because that's the fucking problem.
Let's go to Tuna.
Hey, yeah. So I think the first thing on relating towards gender as a role and who are going to be those figures, I think it's just going to come down to the men in your life. I don't think that podcasts are going to do it. I think that's always an unhealthy medium. We can't really trust anybody that's doing it as a commodification. So I think any of the books, any of the podcasts that are made under the current economic model we know, I don't trust any of that shit. I think that you got to talk to men in your community above all else. Outside of that, I think to become a full man, like I said before, I think being a full man is figuring out your uniqueness and everything. So I think it's going to be about figuring out masculinity in your community, in your family, and then going on a personal internal journey. That's the only thing you can really trust at that point. Everything else is going to be vested interest to manipulate you. And I think also is doing the opposite of the thing that I think masculinity is and what being a great man is.
What's one thinker that helped you become a better man? Just one thinker. A movie, it can be a movie, Good Will Hunting. What is it?
Immanuel Kant, I think probably. You can hate me, Scott. We can argue it, but even as a libertarian, I like Immanuel Kant.
I'm not gonna lie. I've come to one conclusion. I don't want to be a man, a woman, or a human being. I think I'm done. I think I'm good on the human race after this.
Well, what are you saying here? Should we be concerned?
Joel from Last of Us
It
is a
should
great
be
example.
unethical for you to show any concern because you'd be overcoming my individual autonomy to choose my own course in life. So actually, yeah, it would be a little hard for you to ask.
Don't let him move to Canada.
I have an answer, and if we can
It's all right.
pull from fiction,
It's all right,
then-
Kobe. Just move to Canada. We'll be able to get made soon.
and it's not gonna make you be happy. Uzumaki Naruto from Naruto.
Are you serious?
Believe it.
I
fucking
believe it. Yeah. No, but like when I watched it, when I was like significantly younger, like this talk of like loyalty to friends, right, and having to stand up for them, and like never backing down if you've made a promise, like basic things like that. Like it's not that it was like a revolutionary, but like it like hit a chord with me. So like I value loyalty. I think you know this, TB, very well. Is that like I value loyalty in others, and I try to show loyalty in myself. And like, yeah, part of that was, yeah.
You literally missed the entire point of the story of Naruto. The whole point of the story of Naruto is that you cannot just be Naruto. You also have to be Sasuke. The whole point is that in order to defeat evil, you have to integrate that evil within you. You have to have the sun and the moon. You have to have the intellect. You have to have the rationality that tends towards an evil disposition, right? And you have to have Naruto. But no, it's like it's actually a really great story of masculinity. The whole point at the end of that show, right, of Shippuden, is that you have to integrate both of those parts, those aspects. That you can't just be the foolish, happy-go-lucky, everything's okay, we're all going to be friends dumbass.
I don't disagree with you. Why do you think that, like, I would think otherwise? That to be a full person, you'd have to be more than simply loyal, right? Yeah. There's
because you said Naruto, and I'm saying the whole point of that show is that masculinity is a combination of the sun and the moon. It's a combination of Sasuke
I get it.
and Naruto.
Yeah, I get that too. But, like, loyalty is the thing that stood out to me the most. Like, that other stuff, yeah, I got that as... I didn't need the show to give that to me, right? So I'm talking about like how like I just made,
sounds like Cope.
Whatever.
Sounds like Cope.
All right, man.
Sounds like fucking Cope.
Prime, have you watched all the seasons of The Wire?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Bunny Colvin is a great example of a truly masculine father figure, a real man. I think Bunny Colvin would be a great example.
It's been a few years, so I don't remember. A quick explanation?
He was the. Well, I don't want to spoil it for people.
Okay, all right, then don't. But like,
it is a 20-year-old show, though. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Prime. Thinking about that like a little more deeply, right?
Okay.
Because at first I laughed off your fucking anime thing, but then I started thinking, okay, in my life, right? My male role models were kind of toxic, right? The ones that I like had around me. So I did read a lot of books as a kid. And I was thinking like, there are a lot of characters in those books that probably, definitely, massively influence the way that I think of myself, like as a man, right? And influence the way that I think of like everything from like justice to like selflessness to all this kind of stuff. So like, I think for me, maybe like a good example of that would be like Jurista Worden from the Forgotten Realms series that R.A. Salvatore wrote. That most of you probably haven't. But great character. He's like, I don't want to give spoilers, but he is totally selfless, but also like not afraid to stand up for what's right. Has very strong moral code, very resilient. He embodies like the strong masculine man capable of like extreme violence, but he tempers that with emotional depth. Right? It's not scary to be vulnerable sometimes. It's not scary to express yourself. In fact, a man needs to do this, right? A man needs to like confront that part of him. So maybe I guess if I were like to think about it more deeply, maybe Joe Jordan, from that series, and maybe today, Dalinar Cullen from the Stormlight Archive series, another great character, who he like he was like a brutal warrior when he was like a younger man, right? And then as he's gotten older, he started to confront a lot of the terrible shit he did, right? And to confront those things and make amends for them, and to learn from them, right?
So Doobie,
go.
What you're describing, right? And so to add to Kobe, right? You're gonna read Jordan Peterson. You should read Maps of Meaning. Well, it's way better. But that being said, like it's when he's in his element. There's 12 Rules for Life is his PR situation, adding in some of that. But what you're describing and what PrimeCayes is reality, and that is that even when we try and destroy the ideas of gender roles and we try and attack them, mythology, like especially in a marketplace, in a marketplace of ideas, not necessarily purchasing, which is protected by IP, and there's problems there, right? But in a marketplace of ideas, the mythology always comes to the forefront. If you want to know what it is to be have an integrated masculinity, then it's Joseph Campbell's A Man with a Thousand Faces. It's the stories we've been telling, men and women, for thousands upon thousands of years in every single fucking culture. It's the young man that has a call to adventure. It's gaining friends for that call to adventure. It's rejection of the journey at some point. It's the descent into the underworld to resurrect the father, and then it's to react and accept the call to adventure, and then it is to defeat evil in our lives, to make progress, to make the world better, and lastly, to complete the circle, it is to become the mentor to start the cycle all over again. Mythology has been telling us what fucking men are, because that's how biology informs us, and those are the roles we've done. And the social construction around that is the aesthetics, is the different little rules we have for the different ways that we interact within our environment, what you wear, what you do, what you say, what's considered polite behavior and impolite behavior. And like, if you want to understand this problem of like gender abolitionism, like go back to middle school, right? And read that poem that every fucking person in America was probably forced to read, right? The Road Less Taken, or The Road Not Traveled, by Robert Frost. And it ends, right? You know, at the beginning, 2 roads diverged in yellow wood, and it ends, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. It was a meaningless decision that made his life harder to go through the road less traveled by, because it made no fucking difference other than to him to needlessly struggle. Is why we need these frameworks. That's why we need a road that is traveled, because people have been doing it for thousands of fucking years, and then you can break from that and progress society and yourself forward. That is why we need gender roles. They're so important.
I want to thank you all for like the recommendations, but the fact of my reading list is Naruto, Kant, Jesus, Christopher Hitchens, and some D&D books. You guys want me to be like the most turbo virgin?
Wait, no. I recommended Rich Roll's book, Finding Ultra.
No, I was going to say, Corey gave me the best response. I'm going to go to the gym tonight, and I'm probably going to read about him tonight. So
virgin is not an insult. Virgin is a compliment.
I'm joking.
I also took inspiration from Star Wars books, you know, from Jedi, and X-Men, right? Like I was a big fan of that as a kid. Like I think that was very formative. So I've got a lot of great.
Who's your favorite X-Men? Who's your favorite X-Men?
No, I don't want to say.
Gonna be some cringe.
I'm going to be an asshole. I'm going to be an asshole.
Okay. I just want to. First of all, you've never stopped. Like, let's not pretend like, I'm going to turn on the asshole now. All right. But okay. I liked what Scott was saying before, though, and that like we can take these myths from anywhere, right? And that's why actually I really wanted to use those sources, right? Yeah, fair enough. Thick is dry, like bone dry. But I wanted to use those examples to show that you actually can get those morals from anywhere, right? Like, and it's whatever the medium works for you, right? So maybe my mediums don't work for you, and that's fine, that's fair, right? But there is a medium that works for you, and maybe it's like IRL is the medium, like you have to like talk to someone, right? Then you have to have someone to follow, a mentor, sure, right? But like find that road. I think there's lots of different outlets out there, not just a fucking Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate. All right, now I'm done. We're an asshole on.
Yeah, just to be an asshole, Kobe, but in a loving way, and I fucking mean it, right? Read some philosophy. A lot of people give you great books. You know, I would suggest for a great woman, Ayn Rand. I would suggest for a great man, Marcus Aurelius, right? Temper stoicism with objectivism. They're both cool. Don't go full blown Ois, or you'll just be an asshole and a virgin. The second thing, not to be an asshole, but like work out more, clean yourself up. Like you need a haircut. I know that's an asshole thing to say, but it's honest. Get a fucking haircut. Clean yourself up. You'll feel fucking better. Like honestly, like men need to tell other men, like clean yourself up. Or as Jordan Peterson would say, clean your room, right? Like get a haircut and you'll feel better. You'll feel more confident. You'll walk in the world in a better place. You know what I mean? But like that is something there's so much power in cleaning ourselves up and presenting in a way to our confidence and our ability to engage in the world as a man that like we devolve ourselves so often into nihilism and not giving a fuck that it cripples us. Like, I don't know that you got to go full Guy Ritchie and always wear a suit, but like present well, and it changes the way people perceive you and the way that you perceive the world.
I actually totally agree. I think that there has been a bit of an increase in sort of what could become like, I guess you could say like a look culture, I guess you could say. Guys taking more time to think about how they dress, times thinking about how they clean themselves, these kind of things. I completely agree about that. I would critique you though. I think that because we are not very used to doing this, we many times don't do it in the most eloquent way. In the last year, I went from 280 pounds to my current weight of 205 pounds. I go to the gym every day. I think it'd be the better way for you to have done that, we're just to start off by saying, what is your current relationship to physicality? Because it's obviously gonna be frustrating for me to have to be like, well, actually, right?
No, fuck yes, dude. But I'm just saying, you know, some of that is, you know, which of course Twitch and online culture has, I think, made that worse. People feel like they don't need to present well for be on camera panels and stuff.
Fair enough.
Might not be true.
I would say so, right? Like, Aiko being the best dressed of us all,
right?
currently.
Aiko,
yeah,
wearing that collar.
Because
real man.
Is this FUBU? What is this? What's going on here?
This is classic hardwood bucks from the 90s.
The
I
fuck
just
are
want
the
to say,
Bucks?
when I'm in class, I've got full sport coat with the like patches on the elbows and everything. You know, my beard
It's the most
really
stereotypical
is really
professor
just,
look.
My beard solely is just so that when I walk into like the kids behave. Like that's I'd say 80% of the reason I have a beard actually, because that's a real thing that happens in class. I don't know what it is, but when I have a beard, kids behave.
Have you tested it out with is a fake beard equally effective?
I've never done it with a fake beard, but I've had like semesters where like I had a beard one semester and then like shaved the next, and I've done it multiple times, and it always makes a difference for.
Like, do you want to say?
I just wanted to say, you know, I understand that aesthetics and looking a particular way and kind of conforming to society can feel good. I wouldn't champion it as a virtue, though. I think you should be focusing instead on the things that actually.
You don't think aesthetics is a virtue?
Ability.
One of the key virtues is aesthetics.
Well, I think you might be using the terms different. Like I'm pretty sure like lactose intolerance is like strictly your visual appearance alone as you as a person. Maybe you mean the same thing, Scott, but I based off what I
Right,
know
I'm
in
just
terms
saying
of
beauty is a
philosophically-
virtue. Like,
Yeah, so he's not talking about beauty. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not talking about whatever the Greek concept of be like fine, fair, beautiful. Like, no.
right, okay, I was just like, you were like, I don't
Like,
think aesthetics should be extolled as a virtue, and I'm like, okay, well then, like, what is virtue ethics at that point? Like,
Well,
I
Lactoid
just-
started out by saying that you shouldn't get your self-worth based on what you think somebody else finds appealing in you. And aesthetics to me like implies that you care about how somebody else perceives you.
Based entirely on some kind of arbitrary metric of beauty.
look,
Is your life going to be better if you conform to beauty standards? Of course, because people are going to treat you differently. But like, that's not one of the principles that I'm trying to push here. The principle I'm trying to push here is you should be doing things that are good for goodness sake, not because people around you want you to.
but society will judge you for that, and unless
know.
you indoctrinate people out of it, people will prefer symmetry. People will prefer beauty. People will prefer cleanliness, right? And they will
People
prefer things, and they will prefer
People
how
will prefer big
society-
bottles. People will prefer high-fat
People
food.
prefer,
People will prefer.
ultimately, all this is
listen.
people prefer conformity. That's what this is.
No,
I
yeah,
understand they
yes,
do.
yes. The idea that you would teach people to reject norms that make their lives easier and that other people value is like telling people to intentionally play the game of life on hard mode. Like, no. Like, society says this is what looking clean looks like. This is what a respectable person looks like. And these are and
Lactoid's not against
requires
cleanliness. I don't
hair
think.
but it's not. It's like people define cleanliness, beauty, and certain things with
I know
certain
his position on
actions
certain
and
sexual acts.
behaviors.
He's not against cleanliness.
No, listen,
I'm very in favor of cleanliness.
no, listen to me. Like, if society says that it is valuable to have a clean haircut, to have a trimmed beard, the idea that like, well, don't do it because, do it for yourself. Don't do it. No, do it because that's what society says and because it takes effort and because, yes, that is the reality of the world that we live in. This is the whole fucking problem is people want to live in like this judge-free world, but reality check to all of you, people judge. You will never get rid of that. That is, and they judge for a reason because they create standards and people that give a fuck meet those standards. And lazy fucks that are gross don't meet those standards.
I love the lecture. And also, I would say, Lactoid, listen closely to what he's saying. Pretty much conform. A true leader, the true cultivating leadership, just conform to what everyone else says. I don't think I'm disheveled. I'm going to brag. I'm the closest here to being on a magazine cover than anybody else on the panel. Okay, and I challenge anyone to come by my streams. And if you think I'm low T, by all means, have at it. I will go toe to toe with anybody.
Okay.
Want to take a testosterone test?
Yeah, so,
I'm
telling you right now,
I'll-
I'm starring in the femboy magazines. I don't know what magazines you're going in, Corey.
No,
Uh,
Corey's
No, you
right.
can
Corey's right. I
conform
think
and be
aesthetics.
It's
yeah, I
nothing
don't
to
know.
do with conformity.
I
It has
think
everything to do with
beauty
the
standards
framework.
shift. Beauty standards shift. Aesthetics shift. If you want to look different, and you're still able to, be an independent and productive member of society, I don't. Looking the way you look is not particularly on my list of things that I find to be important to improve about yourself. Maybe some people have different preference disagreements.
It's insane. It's insane because look, if you choose to look differently, right? You make a choice and you put effort into doing something different, something out of the mold. People will notice your uniqueness. But if you think people don't have a bullshit detector for people that like don't fucking take care of themselves and are like, I reject categories, so I don't work on any of these things. They're gonna look at you and go, that person's lazy, that person's gross. And that's the reality of the world that you live in.
If these categories are like directly linked with attributes that I want, like physical
Yes.
fitness, sure. But when we're talking about a haircut, or we're talking about sometimes with women, when they're actually physically fit, people say that's gross because they're not super skinny. When in reality, the best body is like a more physically fit body. That should be like, if we're going to be consistent here and like try to encourage like culturally and aesthetically things that are actually beneficial, that's what we should be doing.
Look, none of these categories are perfect, right?
We should
make them as perfect
what
as
this
possible.
sounds like. What this
It's
sounds
bullshit.
like is that a separate conversation we should have. Like maybe like we
right,
can talk next
fair
week.
enough.
Talking
I'm all
about
for
aesthetics.
one on
'cause-
aesthetics.
Yeah. I'm gonna write that down now. Topic is I'm beautiful.
I'll get a
Answer
haircut
yes.
just for that.
Could I?
I cut my own hair because I'm broke.
So
Can I make some of my just quickly make some of my thoughts about this?
sure, because I love you so
Tell
much.
him no and invite him next week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, why don't you come next week?
I don't know if I'd be able to. I mean, that's only very quickly. Just maybe like a sentence.
Okay.
I
All right.
agree a lot with what Lactoid was saying here. As I've lost a lot of weight, I have found that it's not the great well of confidence I thought it would be. I found that you tend to think to yourself, if somebody compliments you, you tend to think, okay, well, you're just now. I'm now just conforming to your predisposed, whatever subjective view of what is pretty or not.
What about me before, right? Like,
Precisely, you didn't see that. You know what did you? It imagines in your mind an infinite well of what did you not see in me before, and then of course, as of like what Scott said, no matter how much you lose weight, there's still some people out there that are going to view you. I mean, Scott says, I need to go to the gym more. I mean, like, what should I go? Okay, I'll wait.
I didn't say you need to
beforehand.
go to the gym more. It was general advice, but the only specific advice I gave you was get a haircut.
So when I lost 40 pounds, the first thing I noticed was that really made me happy.
It's your dick.
Was well, no, I've seen before. The thing that made me happy that wasn't present before is when I woke up in the morning, when I jumped out of bed, I felt lighter and I felt more energetic and I felt good.
you felt fit and healthy.
I felt fit and healthy, and that's why you should do it. And
I
as
really
long as you're
bad-
feeling that way, that's good.
Intrinsic motivation, absolutely. Instead of the extrinsic, because society says so, and you're just caving to societal pressure because that's what we prop up.
So
There's
None
a
of you are
mixed thing
living
here.
in reality.
There's a
okay,
mixed
last
thing
thing,
here.
and then
Look,
we'll-
I mean, the self-awareness is off the charts. It's pretty funny.
Lactoid, can I ask you a question? Did you get there because you wanted to feel fit and healthy? Or do you think inside of the back of your brain, part of it was also the fact that you were conforming towards an expected body? Because I think sometimes what gets you in the door is the social pressure. And then once you're in there, you retain it because of the personal value.
Yeah.
There's-
So
there's-
this is a great point. I will admit, to start, it was the social aspect. But part of that was also due to the fact that all the other elements of it weren't being properly communicated to me, because when I was in high school, there was really only one reason to do it. And that was, well, you have to look good for women. That's what it was. That's what like culture was pushing on me. And the reality is when I went through that, I realized that all the benefits from that were somewhere else. And it was in being able to wake up in the morning and feel good and just feel better. And I think that if we can kind of push that as the reason and to be healthier and to be a better person and to be able to go out and do more things, you know, if you could sell me on that, I think that or sell people on that, I think it'd be a lot more successful.
Okay. And so we'll wrap it up here. This is really interesting. I think we should do this aesthetics topic. I think it's super interesting. Is aesthetics a virtue? Because it sounds like we might have a really deep discussion on that. Guys and gals and non-binary pals, thank you for being here. Thanks for coming through. If you've enjoyed this conversation, and I thought it was a super wide-ranging conversation, this is much better than I thought it was going to be. Honestly, it was fantastic.
Kobe made it that way.
Kobe did make it. I told you this is why he's so great.
Honestly.
Yeah.
No, I think he's wrong on everything, obviously. Of course, I'm always right, but Kobe made it better, for sure.
He does.
You're a smart dude, Kobe.
He is. That's why I thought something coming from his son. Anyway,
Despite
guys.
the lack of a haircut.
Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way through this video, then you've got to like, share, and subscribe. Over 70% of you watching aren't subscribed, and it really helps. We're live on Twitch every Monday through Thursday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. And follow us on Twitter for more spicy libertarian takes. Finally, we all know that YouTube is a temporary place for dissidents. One day we'll upset the wrong journalists and be gone. Poof. But it doesn't have to be that way if you make sure to follow us on Rumble. Every video on YouTube is also posted to Rumble, and sometimes we exclusively stream there. Thank you for your time. All links are in the description below.